Welcome to another episode of the Carry Trainer Higher Line podcast. Hey guys, welcome to yet another episode of the Carry Trainer Higher Line podcast. Got a special guest today. They always are special. This one we've been putting his products in my pants for many years and on my hip. This is Mr. Jeff Mao of Tenicor holsters, and got your belt on today.
Oh, right on.
So you guys make other stuff besides just holsters. Welcome. Before we get to talking to you, as per always, if you guys have any questions on this podcast, anything pops up, throw it in the comments, shoot me a message directly, and I'll remind you of that later. But I wanted to bring Jeff on because the space of holsters is like a lot of spaces. It's super congested, muddy, and like a lot of other products, there's really good stuff and there's really not good stuff. And there's a lot of people that don't know what good is, what bad is, and what they should be looking for. And Jeff's kind of cracked the nut on it. There's some other good holster makers out there too, but they make a really good product. And so I want to kind of talk about some of the philosophy of that, but maybe also business, because if you're able to make a successful business in a super saturated space, regardless if you're selling bread or toasters or tires, it's a hard thing to do, and you guys have been doing a pretty good job. So welcome.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, super excited.
Yeah, man. Where are you out
of? We are in Idaho, Moscow, Idaho. Yep.
Oh, I've been to Moscow. Okay. Yeah. What other company? What other big gun company, like not gun company, but gun related?
There is
I remember driving through. I'm like,
Seekins,
those guys are
Seekins
here?
Precision is in Lewiston.
Seekins is there. Yeah.
And then also CCI is in Lewiston.
I've got a friend that lives in BFE,
south.
not far from you, but I had to drive through Moscow, and then it was like the last civilization, and I was out in the sticks for 45 minutes getting
Night Force is also up here. It's in Orofino, which is about an hour away, and that really is like, it's super, super small town.
Okay. So that area is quite beautiful. Yeah, a friend of mine, Clay Hayes, is out that way. He's up on I can't even think of the name of the town. The town he lives in is a gas station and a diner, so it's not really much of a town.
Most of the towns around here are like that.
Yeah, that's cool. I love that state. So you guys are in Idaho, and if somebody visits your website, they'll see you guys have a video. You say, "Hey, I'm Jeff Mao, and I've been shooting and training for 20 years, and I've shot 100,000 rounds and trained thousands of hours." And so talk about that a little bit. What's your background with firearms?
Yeah, so my background, when I turned 21, I was like, I should get a handgun and carry it because that's what every little kid wanted to do. And so I did that. And then I was like, and I should learn how to shoot it. So I started taking some classes, and I was like, well, this is kind of fun. Maybe I should do something with that. And so then I was like, well, when I was a little kid, I always wanted to be a police officer. So let's try that. And so I did that. And so kind of early on, like, I guess prior to even becoming a cop, I was pretty serious about training. I was like, if I'm going to become a police officer, I should learn how to shoot a gun. I should learn how to fight. And so I started training with a company called Insights Training Center, which probably most people have never heard of. But back in the 90s and early 2000s, before like GWAT, they were pretty well known at the time. I mean, the training industry wasn't really a thing. Like, you had Gunsight and you had Thunder Ranch, and probably that was about it. But Insights was a small little school in the Pacific Northwest, and then they did a bunch of traveling and stuff. So Greg Hamilton and John Holston were the primary instructors there. And so I trained with those guys.
People don't know John. Talk about John for a minute. I know John personally. He's kind of
John is fantastic. John is a old school SF guy. Very experienced and skilled on the martial arts side as well. Ran the combatives program for First Group back in the day, and he's a really good friend of mine and mentor. And so I went to work for Insights as an instructor, and learned a lot from them. Not just about like how to do things, but how to teach stuff. And really,
I didn't know that. I didn't know that you did that. That's cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so I did that. I started coaching before I was a police officer, and then I guess Insights, like Greg Hamilton would trace, shooting wise, he was an instructor at John Shaw back in the late 80s, early 90s.
Let me
He's
jump in real quick. So some of
yeah,
these names that Jeff is dropping, like um, John Shaw, anybody who's anybody that came from a military background that teaches people to shoot guns probably went to one of John Shaw's classes a couple times a year before deploying. You know this, but
yes,
people now they see like a Navy SEAL or a Green Beret dude and they're like showing them some drills. And John was a world-class competitor and started Mid-South. His son now runs their stuff, who they
yep,
sell our products. But people see this and they're like, oh, that Navy SEAL guy came up with it. And it's like, no, John was teaching people this
yep,
shit in the 1980s. So it's always good to
yep.
connect those
Yeah,
dots.
no, I mean, I for sure chase or trace my pedigree and thoughts and ideas of stuff way back to, I mean, even like Jeff Cooper, right? I mean, we
Hmm.
all are standing on his shoulders as kind of like the grandfather of most of this, or at least the one who took a lot of this and particularized and like put curriculum around how to teach it, right?
Hmm.
Because probably Jack Weaver wouldn't even agree with with Jeff Cooper with exactly what the Weaver technique is.
And
Um,
he could outshoot Jeff for sure. So there's
yeah.
some thought process there.
Yeah. So like yeah, like I said, I trace my lineage back to those times. And like you read a book like J. Michael Plaxco's book, right? Shooting from Within. And you're like, that was written in like 1992 or something like that. And
Hmm.
probably the first practical shooting, action shooting type book that really like Brian Eno's covering kind of how do you think about things.
Yeah, I
But
was gonna say
but
Enos had his Jedi
yeah,
mind trick book.
yeah, but shooting from within more about like how do you actually do it? And you read the book and you're like, oh, like we're still trying to people are still trying to figure that out today. And it was really mostly figured out like 90% or more in the late 80s and early 90s.
Hmm.
And we are most of us today are like trying to reinvent what has already been figured out. And I think
Yeah.
most people like conversations with like Matt Pranka and stuff like he'll talk about like he's kind of come full circle and it's like yeah, the stuff that I was doing back 20 years ago is still the stuff I'm doing today, and I'm like coming back to it. Um, yeah, I mean, I mean, it's just the truism. There's nothing new under the sun, right?
Well,
And
there is because when Ecclesiastes was written, there was no handguns. But I get
yeah,
your
yeah,
point that
yeah,
and I agree with that. Like I was just with some super high level jujitsu guys this last week. Like one of them was brought to Brazil by the Gracie family to teach them takedown defense, a Division 1 guy, super stud, guy named Warren Stout. And we're talking and they were drilling something and they were making fun of his brother Logan, who's a badass black belt wrestler as well. And they were calling the technique like Logan's secret technique, and it was a joke because it was this thing known around the world. But Logan arrived at it on his own without somebody showing him because there's only so many ways to,
yep,
twist your arms around another human being. So, like,
yeah,
even if somebody else arrived at it at their own thought process or path, there's only so many ways to grip a little pistol and hold on to it, right?
yep, absolutely. Um, Yeah, and I think the cool thing about today is shooting in one sense hasn't changed a lot. And for sure, the people at the highest level are performing at a higher, they keep pushing the boundary, but it's
Hmm.
not changed that much in the last 20 or 30 years. Because there's kind of,
Nobody's running a bill drill in a half a second or something
yeah,
like that.
exactly, right? There's a kind of a limit to human performance a little bit. And then there's also a limit on the equipment side. Like people can tune guns to actually shoot faster, but they don't blast, right?
Yeah, the
Um,
slides still got to reciprocate and all those
Yep.
things.
But the biggest difference is the number of people that can perform at that higher level. Either the number of people who are just good at shooting or outstanding at shooting. It is like the internet and YouTube and training, like going to class, like teaching a class. Like I remember in 2005 teaching a class. I'm still arguing with people about Weaver,
Hmm.
right? I don't know
Hmm.
what your experience is, but like
Sure.
fast forwarding to now, like I don't hardly ever like people don't even know what Weaver is, right? And so
Yeah,
it's
I
like,
tell those stories just so people remember them.
yeah, you're not trying to convince people to shoot with a thumbs up grip because everybody shoots with a thumbs up grip. You're trying to um, try to get them trying to change how they're doing the thumbs up grip so they can actually do it correctly and do it better, which is totally
Mm-hmm.
different than it was 20 years ago, where it's like, no, it's a big argument with everybody about why Weaver's wrong, and how
I tell a story in classes often, like how lucky we are. You're talking about John Holshin, who was a super stud. He was an 18 Delta, wasn't he? Was he I think he was a medical guy at one
yep,
point.
yep, he's a medic.
So there's this very little amount of information, right? We'd read a book like Plaxo's book, or you'd go to a local IPSC match and find the IPSC geek to show you some stuff. I had access to Bob Housingay, who was a six-time national shooting champ. Bob, actually, his old partner is out in Idaho. He moved to Idaho years ago, but he helped Ayub develop his program, the MAG program. Him and Hackathorn and a couple other dudes. But I'd like travel to Iowa or wherever he was and do like he had a class called Shoot Till You Puke. It was 2,000 rounds if memory serves, and your hands, everybody'd have tape all over their hands, and it was most of the guys were still shooting 1911s, but that was it. It was like go do that or figure it out on your own. Like there was these little pockets of weirdos that were out shooting like that a bunch. And now, like you said, I'll show up to class. I used to spend half a day fixing grips. Now I have everybody shoot. Okay, let's spend 2 minutes and we'll make an example out of you, you idiot. And then I really don't do that, but you fix one guy and yeah, dudes are all that information's free. You put stuff up on your YouTube channel. There's 87
Yep.
billion minutes of video on how to hold it and draw it and load it, and which is cool.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. So I became a police officer. I enjoyed the training stuff. I mean, my resume is probably like most guys' resume who enjoy that stuff of like, FTO, SWAT, firearms instructor, DT instructor, all of that kind of stuff. And I've always kind of said I don't think any of that stuff is very important because there's a gazillion guys out there with all of that same resume. The question is, can you actually take information and communicate it in such a way that helps make people better? Like that's what
Hmm.
actually matters. And like whether you are a dentist or a software guy or whatever, if you know how to shoot a gun and you can convey that to somebody in a way that helps them perform at a higher level, doesn't matter what your background or pedigree is. And so I actually don't, I guess I try to de-emphasize the stuff that I did because I don't think it's actually that important. Um,
I mean, it's got to be somewhat important. I wouldn't go to learn how to play basketball from a guy that only makes pizza.
no, he's got to be able to shoot for sure.
Yeah,
Um, but you could, but you might have a guy who owns a pizzeria place who's been like playing basketball forever, who's an awesome basketball coach, right?
hmm
And never played in
hmm
the NBA, but he's really good at coaching people how to play basketball, and he does it as a part-time thing, right? And that's,
That's true.
yeah. So I ended up being a primary instructor for Insights for several years for handgun and rifle stuff, and that was a lot of fun. And then kind of doing the SWAT thing and doing the training thing. Went to an agency that was relatively had a busy team. So I was on the same team as Bill Blowers. And so Bill and I know each other pretty well. And
Total loser.
yeah,
He's. I'm just kidding. He's a
he's
buddy.
got really small, spindly arms. Is the problem.
Uh-huh. Yeah. No upper body strength.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, and at one point, I would have said, "Man, when I'm done being a cop, I'm going to be a firearms instructor because that'd be awesome." And it would be awesome. But ultimately decided like the travel and all of the things that go along with that probably weren't a good fit for me and other priorities in my life of just like family and stuff. And I know there's lots of guys who are successful with that, but I know it's a big challenge for folks. And
Hmm
I actually just don't really like traveling. And so I'm like, that's not going to work very well if to be a traveling
Right.
firearms instructor guy if you don't like traveling. And so kind of set that dream and aspiration aside. And then at the same, I guess, tying things back into Tenicor, I've always been a guy. So like Masad Ayub and the priorities of survival, mindset, tactics, skill, and equipment. That was something that the Insights folks kind of introduced to me back in the day, and was very evident that like your tactics and skills should drive your equipment. And so I had a particular set of tactics and skills that was mostly shared with people who were high performers. Um, and oftentimes there was not equipment that worked well with what I wanted to do. So I was always the guy on the SWAT team or whatever who had like homemade pouches or whatever because I want my NFDDs in a particular spot to carry them a particular way so I can deploy them at a particular time and to make sure it's safe and all of that. And it's like I make myself a pouch that goes a particular spot, or there's all kinds of stuff like a particular radio pouch because the radio is not carried. It's too far off the body and too low, and I want it to sit closer to the body and higher. So I'm going to take the radio pouch I have, tear the thing apart, put it back together, and make it work how I want it to work. And I'm like super technical about that, and I've kind of always been that way. Um, and then probably in 2006-ish, I started playing with Kydex, and like,
Hmm.
and mostly I started playing with Kydex just because I'm cheap. I'm like, I got a bunch of guns, want to take people shooting. I don't want to spend money on holsters. Let's try this. And that did not work out very well at all. It was not like it was more difficult than I thought it would be to make a decent thing. And I made all kinds of garbage that was hilarious. And then and I'd set that aside, and every few months I'd come back and be like, let's try this again. And um, so this place, Knife Kits, used to sell this DVD because I was playing with Kydex before YouTube was a thing, right? Like
Hmm.
John Houtman and Philster and all his tutorials that were out there in like whatever time frame, 2010, 2011, or whatever that time frame is. Like that didn't exist yet, and I'm trying to figure all of this stuff out. And ultimately, I made like a handmade version of a Kramer belt scabbard. I don't know if you're familiar with
Hmm.
Kramer leather. But like Insights, that was like we all carried Kramer leather, and so I was like I ordered this Kramer leather holster for like $135. They sent it to me, and the trigger guard wasn't cut correctly, and I was like just pissed. Like I got this expensive holster, I can't return it, and it doesn't work right. And I'm like, I'm gonna,
And that was a lot of money in those days. That
yeah,
was not $130 now buys you a bag of groceries.
yep. And so I was super frustrated. I'm like, I'm going to try to figure this out. And so I would keep going back to trying to figure out the Kydex thing. And ultimately, the first thing that I made was a a Kydex version of a Kramer belt scatter, which is essentially what our current ARCs is, right? That's the evolution of that holster or outside the waistband holster is basically trying to be a Kydex version of a Kramer belt scabbard.
Keep
And then the
going.
other thing that I didn't like, yeah, the other thing I didn't like about most polymer holsters was that there was a bunch of rattle. They fit loose,
Hmm.
right? And really, like most people, like just wrap the thing around the gun, put a bunch of tension in around the trigger guard, and call it good. And I'm like, that's not how a holster should be because I'm used to Milt Sparks or Kramer leather or some high-end leather horsehide holster that works really well. Um, so can I make this plastic thing work like those? And that was kind of one of the goals that I had as far as the fit and the feel of it. And so I just played with stuff, and ultimately, I could make a decent outside the waistband holster. It would take me about 2 or 3 hours, and sometimes
Hmm.
I'd throw it away, and sometimes it'd work out great. And I'm like, obviously, this is not a business because I'm not going to charge 250 bucks for one of these holsters. And so I made some for myself. I made some for some fellow instructors. A buddy of mine was a Secret Service agent. I made stuff for him and some of his colleagues, and just kind of on the side. And everyone was like, "Oh, this is really good." And I was like, "Well, it takes a long time and it looks really dumb, and this isn't a real business.
Hmm.
I'm not going to do that." And then just as time went on, the whole like cottage industry of like homebrew kydex started to be a thing.
Yeah.
And in some ways, I was passed by, right? Because I had been doing the homebrew stuff before it was even a thing. Um, but the whole appendix carry thing became something, and I would say I was a little bit of a later adopter to appendix carry. I probably switched over like 2010, 2011. Um,
Loser.
so I was tracking, like I'm friends with Simon Golub, and I was tracking Todd Green and like all the things that were going on there. And Simon and I would talk about stuff. Simon actually gave me a lot of good input. I don't know if you know who Simon is. Um,
Hmm.
he gave me a lot of input early on when I was starting to play with appendix carry stuff, which was super helpful. Because Simon's like
Julie's Julie's husband.
yep, Julie's husband, but I don't, he probably might get mad at me for saying this, but he is secretly the guy who basically invented most of the modern appendix carry holsters. Like all the stuff that um, custom carry concepts, Garrity gun leather, all of those people did back in the day. Yes, that's Todd and Simon. providing input to those things, and even like 5-shot leather, like the SME, right? That's like a Simon thing.
Paul
Um,
Sharp is always very good about reminding people of this fact that you're talking
yes.
about. Yeah.
And so those guys are for sure like the obviously appendix carry has been around forever, as long as people have
Sure.
been carrying guns, right? So I don't,
Pirates.
yeah. So, but the idea of incorporating, of changing the geometry of the holster and incorporating features that optimize comfort and optimize concealment, like that is a 2000, probably 3 to 2007 ish
Hmm.
thing that was mostly out of the pistol training.com world and Todd and Simon and some of those people.
I remember Gabe Suarez, who I'm not like a huge Gabe Suarez fan. I'm not against him, but I remember some guys from my local sheriff's office sending me something from his blog
Mm.
about it. Him at the same time, he was also talking a lot about dots as that was becoming a thing
Yep,
on
for sure.
pistols. But I mean, it was definitely more than one person working on it. But those guys, along with all of the geeks that followed them, all were
Yep,
doing
yep,
jujitsu and
yep.
grappling and trying it.
Yep, for sure.
Hmm.
And then what's his space? Spencer Keepers, right?
Hmm.
Kind of that whole world. And for sure, the appendix thing, like guys at the unit and stuff, they've been doing that for a while, but just like
Hmm.
modernized, intentional version of it. Yeah, super cool. All the stuff that they did, very interesting stuff. And so I kind of started exploring with the appendix carry thing, probably 2010, 2011, and started making change. Like I was watching what was going on in the industry and kind of doing my own thing on the side, and playing basically with most of the ideas that other people were doing. I kind of had either simultaneous or I just was like, oh, that's cool. Like, can I do a better version of that kind of thing, right? Like I remember the first, I think it was JM Custom Kydex was the first time I saw like a molded in like wedge.
Hmm.
And he may have, I don't know if he was the first one to do it or not, but that was the first time I saw it. And I was like, oh,
Tony's a good guy.
and I was like, that's a terrible idea is what I thought at the time. Um, but like, if that's what we do in our holsters, right? It's just like
Yeah.
continuing to refine those different ideas and make them better. Um, yeah. So I just basically I played with Kydex and holsters for about 10 years before I really decided, oh, we should try to do something with this. And it was kind of funny because in some ways I was like late to the game. And I was just doing things on my own. And everyone thought starting Tenicor was the worst idea ever. They're like,
Hmm.
you're going to sell holsters. That is hilarious. And I'm like, yeah, that probably is a bad idea. But the thing that from their perspective, I saw that. But the thing that I saw is, from my perspective, there was no one at the top. From my perspective, everybody was or is basically upper middle class at best, and mostly middle class and lower class. And there's no
Hmm.
one who occupied the top. And for the people who are performing at a high level, they were choosing concealment holsters mostly as an afterthought and mostly because it's just what they had and it wasn't a good
Hmm.
solution for what they really wanted to do. And
There's
so,
definitely tons of pond scum in that space.
yeah. And there's a lot of good companies who make good products as well.
Hmm.
And I'm
Hmm.
not trying to rag on any of them. And ultimately, so I guess what I endeavor to
I
do
didn't hear it that way.
Yeah, what I endeavor to do with Tenicor is to make the highest performing products in the category that we're in. So if we make a in appendix carry concealment holster, I want to make the highest performing appendix carry concealment holster. If I make an outside the waistband holster, I want to make the highest performing outside the waistband holster. And that is what we endeavor to do. And then ultimately, it's for like I don't get to decide if Tenicor's at the top or someone else is at the top. It's the market gets to decide that, right? And so
Hmm.
who are the people that are using your products, who are buying your products? Are they doing it as an afterthought? Or are they seeking it out with intentionality? And that is kind of the decision maker. And so that's the space that I saw. And then the other thing that I realized, like, you know, Walmart could never be Nordstrom, but Nordstrom could be Walmart if they wanted to be, right? And so if I go for the top, I have options. If I go for the middle or the bottom, I'm kind of stuck there forever. You'd have to rebrand, and rebranding is really difficult. And that's also one of the reasons like Tenicor is Tenicor, not Jeff's custom holsters, because like Jeff's Custom Holsters, I think, is a very limiting name. And I had a bigger vision for who we are and what we do.
Ooh, what about Jeff's badass holsters? That could have been. They
Yeah.
might be onto something here. Might be onto something.
Should
Uh,
start another brand. And we'll,
this is one of my most recommended holsters. There's a few I recommend, but this is definitely one of them. And of course, you don't make holsters for every gun that's out
oh,
there, like a lot of companies don't. More
yep,
fighting holsters, like
yep,
duty kind of stuff. But this thing's great. I wear this if it's not inside the waistband. This is probably the go-to. I've got
or not.
some of these for the little Glocks and the big Glocks. They're super dynamite. I've done flips and
Hmm.
climbed trees and jumped off things. I've been underwater with one of these. Just, I mean, not even on purpose, like fell in the water, and they do what they're supposed to do. And they uh, allow for a good draw stroke, which, it's got to
Yep,
be part of it because you
yep.
could just,
About performance.
yeah, you got to be able to get the gun out. So that idea of the space, it's interesting. You said you don't have a say so in it. And I know you're being um, choosy with your words. Of course, you have a say so, right? You could just make shit and then, you'd make
Yeah.
shit. So,
Yep. My job is to make, like, based on my skill and my experience and our team's ability to perform, the best product we can.
hmm
And that's it, right? And that's not the philosophy of a lot of companies. A lot of companies want to make a good product. And there's a place for a company that wants to make a good product because there's a market for that, right? But that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to make the best product. And then there's a little bit of subjectivism, right? So if you and I don't have a shared set of tactics and skills, I might think it's really good, but you're like, that's doesn't work for me, and that's fine, right? I'm not. I like ultimately, it's the best product for people who have a shared set of tactics and skills. Um,
which kind of full circle back to your point about somebody not needing a certain background. I have no tactical background. Thankfully, most of the men that I learned anything I know from do, so that should drive some of my processes. But if the goal doesn't support the outcome, then you got dudes running around with, whatever floppy competition holsters on, or I mean, and that's okay. But if they're not understanding the same
mhm,
tactics and needs, that's an issue. If that guy's teaching or building product, and that happens a lot.
for sure. I mean, most people who build product, or at least people who have designed product, don't have probably the background that would be helpful for them to design a better product, right? That's
Mm.
that's why there's lots of widgets out there that don't do everything that the people who are performing want them to do, which is
I'll tell you a funny story real quick. You'll appreciate this, and then I'll shut up for a while. I'm at this meeting. I'm the only non SF SEAL. I think there was a couple Rangers there, all very high performing dudes, and it's this planning meeting for some firearms training, and a guy asked me to come just to kind of like be the voice of reason. All the rest of these guys are super high speed, action dudes. And I'm sitting around this conference table. There's like 30 men in the room, and one of them who comes from the highest echelons of the SEAL teams stands up, and it's all about concealed carry training. And he pulls one of them in the pants leather deals that what I forget what the brand is, and I don't want to knock on them, but you know what I'm talking about, that
yep.
purse that you shove down and you got the little
Oh yeah,
thing.
yeah,
And so I start laughing my ass off because I think that he's, cracking a joke in front of this
yeah,
group. And he's not. He looks at me like, what the hell you laughing at? And I mean, this guy's like got a storied career
yeah, for
down
sure.
at out at Virginia Beach, and and I'm like, oh shit, he's not making a joke. So I gotta pull up their commercial. I find it on YouTube. I remember it was like as quiet as the footsteps of a Navy SEAL. And when he saw that, he took his pistol out and threw the thing in the garbage. But here's a guy that comes from like the best of the best of the best, and he went on our Facebook, and bought this stupid thing because they show the guy pulling it out, and it's so stupid. But like even with all that training and background, they trained with plate carriers and rifles and a pistol maybe up here, and that
Yep,
was never even something to think about.
for sure. Some of them, like, concealed carry isn't even a thing, and then also, like, their job is big and complex. Shooting is an important part of the job, but a small part of the job. And a lot of those guys are not even really gun people. Like,
Hmm.
They perform at a high enough level that they can do the job, and they're really good at other stuff. And that's the thing. Like people in the firearms industry don't, they assume that they are all better and are all more focused than them. I mean, that was the thing that hit me. Like I remember going to insights classes in the early days, and there's a bunch of SF dudes that show up, and like I've been a cop for a year, and I'm a better shooter than them, and I'm like, what in the world is going on here? And like their job is harder and more complex, and there's all kinds of things that they do, and shooting like they can shoot well enough to do their job well, and they just like they know shooting's important, but it's not as important maybe as the other stuff, and they're good at it, but they're not great at it, and that's okay.
And maybe you personally are more passionate about it.
Yep.
It was a hobby and fun and all
Sure,
those things.
for sure.
So you're in the super saturated space that you admittedly kind of jumped into after that big boom, which I remember watching that. I was a lobbyist here in Illinois. I worked to pass, we were the last state to have concealed carry. And so all these states, Florida, Texas, kind of start the thing, and everybody's jumping on the bandwagon. It's my right carrying guns, which
Mhm.
is cool. And it creates this place we're at now. But yeah, it was like I must have known my friend Sang had a great holster product and he just couldn't stick with it with other stuff going on. I must have known 10 dudes that
Yep.
started holster brands. Um, how did you get things going with all of the other pressures of other companies out there trying to beat you down and not let you?
Yeah, so I guess I I didn't do it until I believed in it. And I didn't do it, and like from my perspective, there was a need that was not being met.
Hmm.
Um, but just because I thought I saw that it's a saturated market, but it's saturated in a particular place in a particular way, and most of those guys are all buying their molds from the same places. There's like two or three places you can buy molds from, right? And they're all, but most of those guys are basically all selling the same holster.
Mm-hmm.
So like there's nothing different about it, and it's not really that interesting. And it's kind of cool, and maybe you can make a little extra money on the side to pay for beer and ammo. Um, but I didn't see that as a real business.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think most of those people approached it like a real business. They approached it like a custom shop, which is where you get into the whole lead time thing, right? So that was a thing that I saw. I was like, lead times, like there's no lead time on Amazon. Um, I don't give you give Amazon 40 bucks and wait 12 weeks for the thing to arrive. That's not like how the real world works. And for some reason in the space of holsters and stuff, like everybody's okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
So I just saw that as and just frankly, I mean this is a little tongue in cheek, but um like it's almost theft, right? Yeah, I'm taking your money for something that doesn't exist yet. No, I should only take your money when the thing exists and then trade you for the money. I shouldn't take your money for the thing that might exist. And for some of those businesses behind the scenes, they take the money, they haven't delivered the thing, and they're running their business on the money that they took. And it really kind of is that. That money should like go in escrow, right? That money should go in a holding account, and you shouldn't release that money to yourself
Take it easy, counselor.
until,
Relax.
right? Until you have, I mean, I'm sure you know this on the, like, as an instructor, like, that's a huge
I've been
difficult thing.
self-employed almost 30 years. It's in different spaces besides this. So yeah, I get it. That old
Yeah.
stealing from Peter to pay Paul thing.
Yeah.
And
And
there's a
it's,
lot of stories of holster companies going out and them having hundreds of orders that are unfilled.
and the
I've
money's,
actually a couple times met guys that like I've called them, hey, I see you got this awesome product. What's it take to get one? Order one and wait 12 weeks like everybody else. Hey, I wasn't asking for any favors, but like, now that you give me that attitude, go F
yeah.
yourself. I'll go.
Yeah. Our objective is to beat Amazon. That I didn't want to be one of those guys. So that means I have to spend more money and I have to invest into materials, um,
Inventory.
and inventory, and I got to have inventory sitting on the shelf. So when you place an order, I can ship it, and I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
ship it the same business day or the next business day.
Mm-hmm.
And that has always been our thing. We ship the same business day or next business day. And there are a lot of customers that like, you do beat Amazon. We get product from you shipped faster and delivered to us faster than Amazon does.
Do
Um,
you sell on Amazon, Jeff?
we don't. We did, but that was just a problem. And so we
Yeah.
stopped.
Yeah, I've
Because
sell
we
some of
have,
our products on Amazon. It's a pain in the ass.
Yeah, because we have better service, customer service than Amazon does, and Amazon assumes we're like every other seller, and they think we don't have good customer service, and so they penalize us for all sorts of things and then they take a bunch of money that they're not earning, and my customer is mostly seeking us out. We're not. If I was selling a $20 holster, I'd put it on Amazon, right? Because I'm to compete with all the other $20 holsters,
What's
and
this one cost?
that is $99.
Okay. Yeah, just as a American, a consumer, I love Amazon. I buy soap. I always tell people, please go to my website, like Gunfighter Gun Oil, or we sell it on Amazon because people expect to be able to use that. But
Yep.
it's, I mean, they earn money operating the site and all that stuff. But yeah, it's people don't realize they take like almost half of a guy like yours profits to
Yeah,
basically
and we'd have
warehouse.
weird stuff where people would return. They'd like return someone else's holster. And we just weren't to us and get a
Scammy.
refund. Yeah, they'd scam us out of something. And Amazon would support them and not us. And
Hmm.
our sales weren't big enough that like the headache and all the extra administrative stuff for being on Amazon wasn't worth it. And so we just pulled everything.
I
Our
dig
actually
it.
our original and customers or your audience probably didn't care about this, but our original
Yeah,
thing
they do.
we were actually gonna just sell on Amazon, or we were gonna use Amazon as fulfillment. That was my objective. And in the beginning, we like shipped boxes of holsters all over the country to be at different Amazon warehouses with the idea they'd fulfill off of Amazon.com, but they'd also fulfill off of our website. And that was
Hmm.
just a huge disaster.
Sure.
So
We
that
do
last,
that with our lube. I've sold all the gunfighter products on Amazon for the last 4 or 5 years. And probably once a month I say I'm pulling it. Like that's the last because the same thing you're talking about. Somebody will call and try to get a free $15 bottle because the label's peeling off because I don't know, whatever, something stupid. And we're very careful about how things are packaged, and it's just so annoying. But the consumer does kind of like that. So that's an interesting thing. So you guys, this space, the saturated space, you said something that I tuned into there. You believed in the product, believed in yourself, really. Talk about that a little bit. So before that, you were just
yeah.
playing?
Well, no, I just didn't. We didn't have. I didn't see products that supported my tactics and skills, and then the stuff that I made and I gave to people who had shared tactics and skills were like, "Oh wow, this is awesome! This solves problems I didn't know I had. I like this better. Can I get this?" And so like, despite the fact that the market was saturated, I thought there was an unmet demand for a high performing concealment holster that hadn't been met. And so I was like, so let's do this thing. And even at the time, like appendix carry was super popular. Our first product was the ARCS holster, the outside the waistband holster. And people thought we were crazy. Like, why are you not doing a fold over inside the waistband appendix carry style holster? And I'm like, well,
I
um,
don't want to.
yeah, I mean, I didn't have one that I thought was unique and different and high performing enough to sell it. And so we didn't. And the most mature product I had was the ARCs. And so that's what we're going to sell. And then the other thing people like the professional space also is something that is underserved with concealment stuff because it's mostly an afterthought. But I'm like, every detective and every special agent in the country should have an ARCs on their hip. Um, and that's hard to do. But I also have been in this space a long time and know a lot of people and have a lot of relationships where like really like we sell hardly any ARCs on our website, but the
Hmm.
ARCs may be the best selling holster we have because that's mostly what the government buys.
Why are they not sold on the website? Why do you think the general population is not digging them?
Oh, because I think a shift that has occurred in the last 10 or 15 years is so like 15 years ago, you'd buy inside the waistband hip carry holster
Hmm.
and a outside the waistband hip carry holster. And you would use your outside the waistband hip carry holster for most of your training, and then you would use your inside the waistband hip carry holster for concealment. Today, most people, they go buy their inside the waistband appendix carry holster and then they go buy their outside the waistband competition training tactical rig with their open top holster. So
Hmm.
that's like the two holsters people are buying are those things. They have their appendix carry holster and then they have their training competition rig. And so a more traditional um, outside the waistband concealment holster is out of favor, I think, for most people. For sure, there's still a market for that. And in fact, so like we are releasing the new version of that holster. So we'll be discontinuing that the one you have there in the next couple months. Yeah, because
No.
you just wait. Like the new holster crushes that in every
I
way.
think some of the fads, I want to hear about it. Some of the fads that people pick up, for example, and I'm not going to stand up and do it, like the inside the waistbands now become accepted as safe through training and good mechanics and all that stuff. And of course, guns that don't go off on their own. But um, you see it not just in classes. I'm always just looking just as an observer in public, and you can like see, okay, that's a Glock 19. That's a frickin', like you can just see
See
as
the
these guys
outline of
with
the
their
gun
little
printing. Yeah,
tummy. Yeah, it's pushing
yeah,
out, and it's like Tom Gibbons always says, concealed means concealed. And I agree. Like there's this like young crowd. I did a video years ago and it did really well. It's got a couple million views on YouTube, but I screwed up when I did it. I was being facetious and I put a medium shirt on. I'm 190 pounds at the time. And I stuck like a Glock 17 inside the waistband. And I said, look, I'm concealed, and then I put a properly sized shirt on and was commenting on it. And man, there were thousands of people over the years. It was probably 5 years ago. Like, you're an effing idiot. It's my right. I can,
yep.
do whatever I want. And it's like that, but like you're missing the
That's not
point,
the
man.
point.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's it. It's so strange. I don't bother even engaging in the argument, but like this is easier to hide under clothes than the appendix if you're just going to lazily toss a t-shirt on. Like I can pull this like to this position of my belt line, and I
Yep.
I carry inside the waistband all the time, but like this time of year I've constantly got a flannel on, I practice, and it's just too easy. I don't want to make the discussion about me and how I carry, but it's weird how the market also drove that. Everybody's offering this, thus, like that little plastic bullshit for clip that everybody uses
Yep.
or did use for years. Like you said, you go on the line and it pretty much a different stamp on the bag, Bob's holsters, mix holsters, whatever. And like that's what the thing is. So you just go buy that thing. It it's probably like a lot of industries where this is what you get. Like in the construction industry, I'm a fifth generation carpenter. I can't make Milwaukee make me the skill saw the way I wanted it or a drill. I just got to buy what it is. And that's why I think having an understanding of what the objective is and the usage matters,
Mhm.
why I keep harping on that point. So keep going. So this thing is now evolving. What did you change about it? What's it going to do better?
It's gonna conceal better. Well, so it is. Uh, it's gonna have modular wings on it, but modular wings unlike anything you've ever seen before. Um,
Like leopard print or
no, just the geometry of them.
so no longer two solid pieces formed
Uh,
together. The wings themselves will have some articulation,
they don't have articulation, but it's like, yeah.
movement here.
It'll be so it's stronger. So that holster. So some people give us a hard time. They're like, "Oh, you should never use Kydex for your belt loop," because they're thinking back to like, um, a Raven concealment type Phantom when they used just little scraps of Kydex for the thing, right? And yes, that's a bad
Yeah.
idea. That's a
Yeah,
terrible.
you could shear that pretty
Yeah.
easy.
But that holster with the loops integrated is a totally different thing. That being said, there are some body types that flex it a bunch, um, and it will crack at the creases over time. And so we like, and it's usually the same customers. Like we have a couple customers that it's like every 12 months they're like, "Hey, my holster broke," and we send them a new one, right? And no big deal, right? We stand behind our product, and happy to do that. But it's usually the same handful of people, and so like, yeah, that's a known thing. And so we want to solve that. So we have like a cycle tester. So the old holster there on our cycle tester, which is basically a piston that moves back and forth and
That's flexing it.
flexing the wings attached to like a belt. We would get like 7,500 cycles before on that holster, 7,500 cycles before you'd start to see a hairline crack, and then you'd get to about 18 to 20,000, and the crack would be big enough that you're like, you should retire this and swap it out for something else.
What's
Um,
the frequency of the pumps on this piston?
oh, I don't know the rate, but I mean, we can
But I
do
mean,
10.
it's
We're doing 10,000 cycles in a day, kind of, right?
so maybe there's even a heat issue that would never be there.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, it gives us a. I'm not saying that it's getting in and out of your car 10,000 times will compromise the holster. I'm just saying like we're able to set up a thing and we can measure that, and then I can compare that holster to the new holster. So
So what's the difference?
the new holster will go over 100,000 cycles before you even see any sort of um anything at all, and we
So
haven't,
so
we
you
haven't broken
you've
one yet.
more than 10x'd it.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
that's
Um,
awesome.
and the new so basically our two tests for an outside the waistband holster are going to be the cycle test, which is going to be a long-term wear thing, and then it's going to be a pull-up test of basically stick a gun or a rod through the holster, strap the holster to a pull-up bar on a belt, and then you're hanging on to the blue gun that's hanging out of there, and you're doing pull-ups on it, right? So one would be a long term like wear test, and the other is more like a dynamic. Is this going to hold up? And this new holster like crushes both of those tests, even compared to that one. And
That's
that one
cool.
does really well. And so, yeah. So I'm really excited about it. It will conceal well for a larger variety of people. It's going to be zero. So that is a 10-degree cant. This one, it's going to default as a 0-degree cant. And then you can get a different set of loops that if you want a more cant to it. And
Cool.
most of our customers are asking for zero cant, particularly on the government side. They're like, well, we don't care. We want zero cant. So we're like, okay,
I find it a little more comfortable to have the cant.
I
That's
agree.
just me. That's just
I
me.
agree. I mean, I love that holster. I mean, that holster. Yeah. I mean, the holster's made for me, right? So it
Right,
works
right,
really
right.
well. Made from my body.
My my first real holster was a Bianchi, similar cant to this that I carried a 1911 in, so it feels right to me outside the waistband. Anyway,
Yep.
so you decided I believe in myself. I'm getting after it. I'm doing the thing. And
Yep.
you
And we did it.
so
So
what
launch.
that look like? Did you have to like mortgage your house? Did you have a bunch
No,
of
so I had already spent tons of money on stuff. So I have all this equipment. I guess in the beginning I was like, I don't want to be a custom shop because like one of the reasons we don't offer customers or sorry, one of the reasons we don't offer colors is because obviously we'd have to have lead times. So like currently right now we probably have about 2,000 holsters sitting in inventory waiting to be sold. And they're all black. So if we added Coyote instead of 2,000, we'd have to have like 4,000 sitting there and so on, right? It's
it's
just,
like Henry Ford with the Model T.
yeah,
Can
it's
have it
just,
any color you want as long as it's black.
yeah. I was often say, it's like, we have this really cool red. It's really dark. It looks a lot like black.
Did you ever
Uh,
hear that quote from
yep,
Henry Ford?
for sure. Yep. Um,
That's that makes good sense. I mean, if people that want to geek out on that stuff, I get it, but
yep.
for what these are for,
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
yeah.
And so originally I actually didn't even want to I did not want to do thermoform stuff. I actually wanted to do it injection molded. And I know injection molded holsters equals garbage, right? But the thing that struck me once, I was looking at my Magpul CTR or whatever. I'm like, this is injection molded. No one thinks this is junk. So why are all injection molded holsters junk? And so I went and looked into it, and well, it's just because molds cost a lot of money, and cheap molds produce cheap looking things. Expensive molds produce expensive looking things. And you can do anything you want to do injection molding. You just have to be willing to invest in it. And so,
Hmm.
first thing that I tried and looked into, and it was pretty difficult to get people to even take me serious and talk to me because I was nobody. And I was like, yeah, I mean, most holster injection molds probably are in the 10 to 20,000
50K.
dollar.
Okay,
Oh,
20.
it's relatively inexpensive and they produce a cheaper looking thing, right? And I was like, I'll spend 40, 50 maybe. And like, we're going to sell a bunch of these. And so let's see what that looks like. And I'm going to make this outside the waistband holster and the government's going to buy it and it'll all work out. Um, and that was a good idea, but I'm glad it didn't work out because there's a lot of stuff that I just didn't know and I wouldn't have been ready. And so we kind of compromised and went with the thermoform thing. But I'm glad that we did that. And so I guess it was a process of I hired someone to do CAD for me. I knew wasn't gonna. I wanted to do my own design, right? I was a cop. I am a SWAT guy, a shooter, a police officer, go arrest people. Like I at that point I had kind of realized I didn't want to do the training thing when I'm done, and I'm like, and then I also got frustrated just with the government of like I'm somebody who wants to make things better. The government, and I finally realized the government exists to exist, and it's
Mhm.
actually in their best interest to not be better. They are
Mm.
just trying to that it exists because of liability, right? The city has a police department and a fire department because of liability and for no other reason. And so if you can check those liability check boxes, there's no incentive to perform at a higher level, right? And so all of the stuff that I wanted to do of training and everything and in-service training and whatever, like ultimately, I just made people mad because I was trying to change things, and they're a
How
bunch.
often have you heard that story too
Yeah.
from everywhere? You
Yep.
hear it
And
everywhere.
yep. And finally, I was like, this is just not the place for me, and I need to figure something out. And the holster thing was the thing that I had that was the most mature, and I'm like, I'm going to try to figure this out. And so I stayed as a police officer. I kind of switched departments so that I could went to a department who didn't really care if we were super proactive, and so I could kind of spend time in my car when I'm not answering a call, working on other stuff. And so at the end of my career, I worked there for like 3+ years or so, while I was trying to do Tenicor kind of at the same time. And so ultimately, I hired someone to do CAD, hired someone to do all of these different things, and we put the product together and released the ARCs on a website, tenicor.com, in like March of 2017. And so I guess that's 8 years ago. That's crazy. That was 8 years ago. It feels like 20 years ago and feels like yesterday at the same time. Um,
You've come a
uh,
long way in that amount of
yeah.
time.
So release that product and uh, yeah, I mean, I thought that people would buy it, and people mostly didn't buy it. I think we probably did $30,000 or so in that first year. And
Are you
probably,
married, Jeff?
yep, I'm married and I have four kids.
So what was
Um,
your wife saying at that point?
um, so my wife is wonderful. She didn't care about money at all. She cares about things that matter, and she cares about like being productive and blessing people. And
I like that.
she was just excited about the thing and super supportive and like, yeah, we're gonna figure this out. And so she's amazing. And so we probably spent about 100 grand that first year on about $30,000 of revenue, right? Uh, and yeah, things kind of took a while to take off. And I guess after we launched that product, I started working on inside the waistband stuff. So I worked on inside the waistband stuff in development for about a year. Like I guess with I had tinkered with inside the waistband stuff before, but not in a way of like I actually need to design a product to sell, right?
Hmm.
So kind of worked on that. And in that time, like I realized it took me longer to explain what I wanted to do in to the guy who was doing CAD for me than it would for me to just do it myself. And so I taught myself CAD in my patrol car, sitting there watching YouTube videos and playing
So just so I'm clear, while you were supposed to be out catching bad guys, protecting and serving, ruining people's day, pulling them over, you were
Yep.
self-educating on
Yep. Self-educated
computer-aided
because
drafting.
at that point, so this is post Ferguson, right? Law enforcement had fundamentally changed, particularly so
Hmm.
at that time we were in the Seattle area, so particular in larger metropolitan areas. And I grew up as a cop of like I worked for a place called Linwood Police Department, a relatively small agency. The guy who was the chief was an old school Oakland cop, and I mean, we had our own jail, and we just lined them up. It was so much fun. I mean, like we would arrest. I mean, it was just a game of like how many criminals can we find and put them in jail. Super fun. Yeah, like 2004,
Jaywalkers, you guys are
2005.
just tackling them.
No, actual criminals, right? Actual criminals like drug dealers
I'm
and
just kidding with you,
yeah.
man.
But like super fun. But law enforcement changed a lot, particularly like I think Ferguson was like the um we're getting a little off topic here, but Ferguson was like the predecessor to all of the Black Lives Matter. I mean, that's where the Black Lives Matter stuff kind of came
It
out
was
of, right?
the impetus to a huge change in
That,
a lot of
that happened
things
with
in
COVID
the
and all that.
country and
Yep.
world. Yeah.
And they're just a lot of places after that stopped being proactive. And so I worked at an agency that was okay with people not being proactive, and that just was what it was.
So
Um,
so you'd sit in the car and watch videos on how to program
yeah, I sent
the
out a tutorial about Fusion 360, and I'd follow along. I'd pause it and do the thing in CAD, and I'd watch them more and do the thing, and I taught myself CAD. And then I got to the point where I could do it faster than I could explain it to someone else. And so I just started doing it myself. And so at this point, well, not anymore because we have like an engineering team. But for a long time, I was the one that did all of it, all the CAD work, all the design work, all the machining. I mean, that's another thing. I had to teach myself to be a machinist. And so I started out with little hobbyist um, CNC routers. Went through a couple of those before I went to a commercial grade CNC router. I remember it was just before
you're
are you
talking like a multi-axis machine that you
yeah,
put a block of metal in
you
and
put
it
something in front and it comes and cuts the whole thing, right? And
hmm
so, um, had some hobbyist things and then bought a Cam Master Stinger. And that was like the first commercial grade. It was like the smallest commercial grade thing because it was in our garage and it would work on 110 volt. So I got
okay.
like the biggest 110-volt thing I could get. And that thing, uh, yeah, I would say probably March of 2018 was a pretty pivotal time. I was about to give up the whole thing.
Do you
Um,
still have it?
we still do have that machine. I was about to
I
give up the
s-
whole thing because I'm sitting there
I
like, what I like doing is shooting guns and teaching people to shoot guns. And I'm like in this weird nerd place yep, trying to figure out how to make that machine work, which I couldn't figure out how to make it work. And I've never done anything like this in my life. And I'm trying to figure out CAD. I'm trying to figure out how to do all of these different things. And it just wasn't working. And I mean, literally at this point, I'm like all in and I'm like, I'm crying, right? Which may sound funny to people, but if you've ever done anything where you're all in on the thing trying to figure it out, I'm just like frustrated. Like, what are we going to do? Like, I've spent all this money,
you could
all this
feel
time,
it.
and I could feel, I'm like, I don't, and then I'm also like, I'm trying to make something that is different than what other people do. And I'm like, maybe this just can't be done. And it's like the reason no one else has made holsters like I'm trying to make holsters is because you can't make holsters like I'm trying to make holsters. And I'm just like frustrated. And I'm talking to my wife, and it's like she she's like, "Have you given thanks for this?" I'm like, "Given thanks for this thing that is this hard thing that I've been slaving away at that's not
For the
successful?"
hardship.
No,
Yeah.
no, I haven't. I'm like, "Oh yeah, I should probably give thanks for it." Um, and so like I prayed about it, gave thanks, and it was like everything. And then all of a sudden, in the next week, I started figuring out all of the problems that I didn't have answers for, and it just kind of happened. Uh, and ever since then, it's like like problems continue to happen all the time, but everything like you can work through whatever you want, and you got to have gratitude. Like gratitude isn't something that like the fun stuff. Being grateful for the fun stuff isn't real gratitude, right?
Hang up your
Um,
shirt, bro. Can you read it?
gratitude of or the attitude of
Attitude.
gratitude. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the fun stuff isn't real gratitude. That's just fun stuff. Gratitude comes out when it matters, when it's the hard stuff or the
Hmm.
stuff you don't want.
That's
And that
true.
matters. And so that was for sure the lesson I learned at that point. And so it's been a whole lot of giving of thanks in the last 7 years since that point. Um, but we figured it out and we pushed through it, and then came up um, with the new product with the inside the waistband concealment holster, appendix carry holster. A couple months later, around that same time, discrete carry concept started, and I got introduced to Matt at discrete carry concepts, and he and I really hit it off. And I'm like, I want a clip that does this, and he's like, oh, I can do that for you. And so he made us. I think we're like the only. I think us and Winkler are the only people who have like a branded um, DCC clip, like actual, not just change the logo, but like this is their clip, right? And so we did that, and then we went to the thing called TriggerCon that summer, and it's crazy. Like we put our product out there, the Velo holster with our clips and the body contour and all that stuff, and they had a most innovative product thing competition, and the judges came around and they're like, "Oh, this is interesting." And so like a holster company won the most innovative product at this. It was, at the time, relatively small little show up in the Pacific Northwest. Um,
Hmm.
but like that was really like someone actually is acknowledging the fact that what we're doing is cool. Well, that's pretty awesome.
That
Um,
is
and,
awesome.
and around that same time, we got connected with Kyle DeFore. And so Kyle is, one of the OG kind of post GWAT trainers, been doing it a long time. And he
Hmm.
saw our product, was like, yeah, that's cool. I want to use this product. So he started talking about it. And we went from, I think, $30,000 that first year in 2017, but then on like the heels of Kyle and the TriggerCon thing, we ended up doing like 150K in 2018, which was like crazy, like huge money, right? Um, and then later that year, we like hired, it was me and another guy who was doing it part time. And then we hired our first full time guy later that year. Um,
That's fantastic.
and then also later that year is when I quit law enforcement. I was like, basically, we committed to hire this first full time guy, uh, and he was going to show up in a couple weeks. And Vicky and I were talking. I'm like, what is he going to do when I'm That's going to be weird. And then we were like, I think we can make this work. I should quit. And then like I quit and
And you
left.
went from having all the benefits and all that
Yeah,
jazz to
sure.
nothing.
Oh, people thought I was
I've worked like
crazy.
that my whole life, so it's
Yeah,
but I
people thought I was
that's a
crazy.
and you had kids.
Yep, kids, mortgage, everything. And I mean, I took like no benefits, no anything. Um, uh, Probably took about a 40% pay cut of like I think we're like we can make it by with this. And so, which is not at all what I thought. I was like, oh, I'm gonna quit law enforcement after I can replace my income plus all the benefits plus this, and when we get to this amount, that's when I'll leave. But I mean, that's been the history of Tenicor. Is like I have an idea of when something's going to happen, and then reality sets in, and it's all a huge sacrifice to make the thing work without having reached that goal.
And that's the only way almost any successful endeavor works that way. Nobody's once everything's perfect, then I'll set this other thing down where I feel totally comfortable. It's like it doesn't work that way. You
Yeah, for
can't.
sure. There's no, and that's the thing that I definitely learned with Tenicor. There's no such thing as arriving.
Mm,
There's no such thing as getting to a certain point. It is all a process of sanctification for your entire life. And so people think, oh, if I get married, or oh, I graduate from school, or oh, I get this job, or I get this promotion. They think they will arrive and things are going to be good. And like that's not how the world works. Like that's a thing that you might get in glory, but you don't get here on earth. Um,
mm.
and like that's when you arrive, not here. And so this is an entire process of sanctification and having gratitude for that the trials, the pain, the difficulty, and the celebrations and all of the things. But it is a continuous process that goes on for the rest of your life. And it is what it is. And if you're willing to embrace that process, you will be more successful and you will accomplish more things than if you're always looking for something to arrive to.
I dig that. My old man was a preacher, so I hear you talking scripturally. I believe it was Paul that said, joyful in all things. So, like, if you people fight that process. I was about 18 sitting on some sawhorses with one of my uncles I worked with, and my life wasn't amazing. Had a bunch of BS going on, and we're eating lunch, and I'm like, man, I can't wait till I'm your age. And he's like, why? He goes, why would you want to be my age? You know, like you're young, you got your whole life ahead of you. He was probably like our age then. And I go, because then I'll have it all figured out, man. Like I'll be happy and like stop struggling. And he started laughing. I remember he like spit his coffee out or spit a hunk of sandwich out. And he goes, you dumb SOB. He's like, on my grave, it will say, here lies Uncle Bob. He didn't figure shit out. That was like, and I remember it like at the time, it was like this kick in the gut, like, crap. I was thinking like, if enough time goes by, I will like get past the hard stuff. And it was kind of the same thing you just said. I just had another story for it, but it was
Yep.
like, and they've had a great life. My aunt and uncle are wonderful people. He's one of my favorite humans, but like he knew at that point, like you just get up and go sort through today's problems, mend the nets, bail the
Yep.
water out of the boat, watch the sunset, etc., and do it
Do it again
again.
tomorrow.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It seems like so many people have great ideas and these problems come up and then it's it's too hard and that's why they don't get to sell bunches of widgets or whatever it is. They're not
Yep.
willing to stay the course.
I mean, it's hard and it's draining. It's lonely. It's all kinds of weird things that you don't expect it to be. Uh, and so you got to have like real vision. It can't be a thing like you if you're trying to take a shortcut, right? Or take an easier path, then like entrepreneurship is not a thing.
Hmm.
Uh, it is you have to have real vision and real passion and actually have a real drive to see something through all of the difficulties and grow it and actually believe in something, right? Not just be an opportunist. There's a lot of people who start businesses and they're just looking to exploit an opportunity. But do you actually believe in something? And are you actually trying to build something? And does it benefit people? And if it does, then you should believe in it and you should keep going no matter what. And then the market will decide whether it works out for you.
That's a good way of looking at it. Years ago, before the like '08 crash, I had a family member that was an excellent mason, and he wanted to go on his own, and everybody in his family told him no. And he did it at a very inopportune time that nobody saw. Well, some people saw, but the housing market crashed, and he's a professional mason. So he goes on his own. There's this bad time. He's got to go back to work. Everybody in the trade scrapes by, and everybody that I was helping him. I'm like, yeah, man, do it. I've been self-employed for years, and like we help him with paperwork and stuff. So the folks that were against it, they said, see, we told you. Well, now 20 something years later, he's got a freaking awesome business. And,
Mm.
it's kind of like there's no joy in I told you so, but like if you listen to people, then we're all just going to go. That's a mentality. Like the cops, teachers. I hear it from people all the time because you're like in 20 years I'll get to enjoy my life. Like, and
Yeah.
then I'm going to go get a job at Walmart so I have insurance. I'm going to go get a job at Home Depot. I'm like, if that's you, that's super cool. Like, if that's, I've got 20 friends that are retired local coppers that are all delivering furniture a couple days a week to pay for their insurance. It's like, man, this sounds stupid. Like, like, like that. But if that's you, that's
If they
cool.
enjoy it, that's great. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a different mentality, a different mindset. I mean, there is like my parents' generation definitely is longed for retirement, right? Of like the objective is to get to the point where you don't have to work, which is a totally different mentality. I mean, I don't think I'm ever going to stop working. I think the nature of my work or the pace of my work will change over time. Um, but like working is being productive. Working is
Hmm.
taking dominion. Working is having purpose. Like I think that's why I'm here on this earth, is to go be productive and take dominion. And if I'm not doing that, like there's a reason why, how many cops die within a year or two after retiring, right? It's like the productivity, the purpose stops. Um,
You
and
see that, you go to any profession, dudes quit and then they just putz around all day. I just talked to a friend the other day that's totally capable. And why are you retiring? He said, it's time. What are you going to do? I'm going to go get a job at Walmart as a greeter. I'm like, what the hell? That doesn't
yeah,
make any sense to me.
no, yeah,
I watched this documentary a couple months ago. It was beautiful. If I find it, I'll throw it in the show notes. It was about this dude in Switzerland. He's like 95 years old. He builds these wooden ladders. They're beautiful. He goes out in the forest, he cuts spruce trees. And the ladders are all unique and they're for this very specific type of fruit picking that happens in the Alps. And their ladders are super light and everything's wood. All the rungs and the uprights are all made of spruce. He goes and sources the trees, he scrapes everything down, he stacks it up, and then every day he pretty much makes a ladder, all hand drilled and all these cool things. And like at lunchtime, his wife walks down the street or rides a bike, and she's like 80 or 90. And she helps him like flip something over to assemble the pieces. They eat lunch together. She goes home. By the end of the day, he stands another ladder up, and all these fruit pickers, they last a long time. They come and buy these things because they don't wreck the tree. And
yep,
it's beautiful process of woodworking. And the interviewer's like, why are you still making ladders? Like, clearly you've made enough money to live. He goes, what do you mean? He goes, well, why are you still working? He goes, this is what I do. I make ladders. How are the people going to pick fruit if I don't
yep,
make the ladders? Like, and it was so like simple and pure. Like, this is what I do. Like, what are you talking about?
productivity. Yeah, I
Yeah.
follow this Instagram thing, Taku Wood, I think is what it is, and it's this Japanese guy that does like, he just shows the joinery of like
I
connecting,
love that stuff.
right? And I like, it's awesome. And I don't know that this is what I would do as a thing if I'm done with Tenicor. I'm ready to do something that is lower pace or whatever. But like the idea of learning that craft and then making like super cool furniture that is only made out of wood joinery, like that is super interesting to me. And I think it would be really fun. But
It's
we'll see.
cathartic. I've worked with wood my whole life, so I don't think I'll be doing that, but I might write a book on dick jokes. That's something that I've been working on. That's kind of right up my
Probably
alley,
so
but
well.
I think it could actually. In the time that you've been in business, what are some mistakes you've made that you would, if you could go back, you'd change? Or are you the kind of guy that like, I wouldn't change anything. Everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, I'm one of those guys. I mean, for
Yeah.
sure things are hard, but like I wouldn't be who I am today if I hadn't done those things. And I don't know, I wouldn't have learned the lessons. And so I don't look at, um, not in a, I want to be positive and weird, but just in a practical, like mistakes are who we are. Um,
Hmm.
and that's what it is. Yeah. I mean, have I hired weird people and have I made weird decisions? And for sure, have I lost money on things? Yeah. But even the things that I've lost money on, right? Like, I mean, I spent a lot of money on stupid CNC machines that didn't last
Like a
very long
like
or
a
didn't work.
corner of dead CNC machines over
Yeah,
there at the shop.
but I didn't know. Like ultimately, we're running the machines that thought I should have bought, that people told me I should have bought a long time ago, but I didn't buy them because I was scared.
I look
Um,
at that stuff. There's nothing. There's never something for nothing, and you either go to a college and get the education, or you paid for it. You invested it into the education of a machine that you had to sell on Craigslist for
yep.
half the price or whatever. Yeah, it's the same thing. I've done that stuff so many times. Not so many times. I think I'm probably a lot smarter than you. I kind of learn from my mistakes, but that's a joke,
I
everybody.
only learned a little bit,
Just a little.
just a little.
What's the desired end state? Shall every undercover guy in the world use your holsters? Maybe a new plaid design. Maybe you'll finally add some colors.
um, Continuing to improve and make stuff. So pretty much, we were stale for a long time because I was very focused on internal processes as far as the
Hmm.
product. And I think one of the things that was different about us in the beginning is we changed really fast the first couple of years and improved the product really quick. And then it was like, oh, I actually run a business and I got to figure this out. And now we're at a point where like we have an engineering team, and so people who can support it and help it and change things. So we're in the we went from the Velo 4 to the Velo 5. We're going from the Arcs to the Arcs 2, and we'll kind of refresh the entire product line hopefully within the next year or so.
That's
Um,
cool.
and then continue to do that, right? That is something that I want to like. Re- I've been less involved with like training and shooting and the community than I have been in the past. So I want to be more involved and more engaged because that's where ideas and stuff come from. Because we want to continue to make products and make products better. And so
You go ahead.
no, I Um, yeah, I mean that we want to make products and make products better and make people better. Hopefully, make higher performing products and understand the process, understand how to communicate performance to people, understand how to get people to perform better, understand how to provide products that complement them better, all of that. And so I think, yeah, where are we going? Better concealment products. I mean, the zero belt thing I think is really cool. I think that's got a lot of legs. We have some production stuff we're trying to sort out with that.
I like it. I'm wearing it right now. Just so
Yeah.
people watching, I didn't pay for this. You sent it to me and you're not paying me to share it, but it's become cool enough. I haven't changed in shape much. I've worn my spot in there, but this thing's slick. You just slip her through and it locks on itself. I have tested. I threw this over the bar and have hung on it so
Yep.
she doesn't come apart.
So is that, let me, I'll try to kindly clarify something.
Go
The
ahead.
tail, is that how you thread
I,
it?
I
Okay.
don't like it on the
Oh, you don't
inside.
like it on the inside.
No, I don't. I
Okay.
don't.
All right.
Because the way I wear my pants and the way I run it around. No, actually, do I run it on the inside? Yeah, I think I run it on the inside. Yeah, I think I go with depends on the pants. So the pants I have
Okay.
on right now, when I put this through the outside, the way I carry it over on the side, then my
You leave
belt
it on the
loop,
inside. Okay.
the belt loop holds it. It lays
Yeah.
flatter
It holds more consistently on the inside. And obviously
on
it's
the
designed to be
inside.
on the inside. But you certainly can do it on the outside. There are some people who don't realize it's supposed to be on the inside, and I just wanted to
Yeah,
clarify.
I've tried. It depends on the pants I have on. The pants
Yep.
I'm wearing today, um, I prefer it this way, and then it also depends on the holster I'm wearing and where it is. I've actually worn this over the right side and had the holster clipped over
Go over
all
both
of
pieces.
this. Yeah,
Yep.
I've tried it numerous ways,
Yep.
but this is a great product that I noticed. I just sent somebody a link. It's sold out on your
Yeah,
website.
it's always sold out. Basically, we get a shipment every 1 to 2 weeks. It sells out in about an hour or two.
Well, stop doing
Uh,
that.
I
Figure
know.
it out, man.
Yeah, we're working on it.
Figure it out.
We're working
This
on it.
it's a good product. That's a good problem to have, except if somebody's got to have a belt, they're going
Yeah.
to go elsewhere to get the belt.
Yep.
I was a question I was going to ask you, and I kind of have a feeling of what you'll say from listening to you, but I want to ask it anyway. So this is a funny space. Um, I've got a friend. His name's Dan. Dan owns like 10 restaurants. And of course, he's friends with other restaurateurs. But at the end of the day, somebody goes to dinner. He wants them to come to his restaurant, right? Of course, if we're all at a dinner party, he says, I want you to go to Jeff's restaurant too from time to time, but he's spending marketing money. He wants people to come in.
Yeah.
It, it, I saw you at SHOT Show across the room. We didn't get to visit. Everybody was hanging out, BSing. There's so many of these people were friends, um, trainers, product makers, etc. You need customers. And
Mhm.
how do you juggle those and manage those relationships as well as at the end of the day when you spend thousands of dollars on marketing and things like that? How do you manage that?
Uh, I think that like I got to believe in the thing I believe in and do the thing I'm doing. And I guess I don't. It's not a zero sum game, so it's not like there's a finite pie. The world is a world of abundance. And that's the thing I think just culturally we don't really truly believe or understand. That's why we fight over all the weird things we fight over. But I think the world is a world of abundance. And I think that if something's not good, the market will sort that out. and that'll go away, and that creates opportunity for other people. But then there's more people, and there's more. Let's recruit people to be in our space, right? We saw that with COVID. Lots of people came into the space. And that's going to ebb and flow, and it's not going to be the same amount of people at different times. But um, the the better we are, and the better we are to one another, the more people will be attracted to who we are and what we're doing. And whether that is buying my product versus another similar product, or choosing to be involved in buying guns and self-defense versus racquetball, right? You just got to believe in the thing you're doing and be positive about it. Don't be positive about it necessarily in a weird way, because if people are doing something stupid that's wrong, it's perfectly fine to say, yeah, like, don't shoot a gun like that, right? Don't
Hmm.
carry a gun like that. Um, and so it's a world of abundance. It's not a zero-sum game. And so I'm like, in one sense, I'm fighting with everybody, but how I fight with everybody is to believe in what I believe in and do my thing. And then it's up to the market to decide whether they want to buy my product versus the other people. It's not like, I don't see it. I don't like, yes, do I have competitors? I do, but I don't think about it like I'm competing with them. If I think about it like I'm competing with them, I think I've already lost. I'm competing with myself to be better.
I
Um,
like it.
and if what I can do is be better than what I'm producing, and the company grows because of that, then that's a good thing, right? And it's not. I don't get to decide what some other holster company does or doesn't do. I think there's not there, like, you can't you like, in one sense you're competing, but you can't even really compete. And why would you want to compete? Like, why would you actually want to say they did a red one, so we're going to do a burgundy one? We did a blue one, so they're going to do a turquoise one, right? And like, we're in this weird back and forth thing, and we're vying for the same customer. It's like, well, let's just make a bigger pie, right? And they're going to yeah, I mean, they're gonna survive if they can survive, and I'll survive if I can survive. And I'll grow if I can grow, and they'll grow if they can grow. And I mean, I don't even. Is it tempting sometimes to look and see what other people are doing? Yes. But that's just a stupid distraction. And it's mostly I do a pretty good job of reminding myself that, but certainly the team does a good job as well. And like, I think culturally at Tenicor, um, that's the perspective that we have. It's like, we believe what we believe, and we're doing what we're doing, and we're not really worried about other people. Uh,
I like that. That's a good answer. I figured you'd answer something like that. An interesting it's an interesting thing when you watch how people approach what we just talked about, because there's companies, crush everybody, kill the competition, and I see it constantly. Well, a space that we see a lot in right now is like the concealed carry insurance kind of space, and
Hmm.
it's not. I work with one of the companies, and they just say, here's what we offer. It's really good product. Here's a bunch of case studies of it working. And it seems like a bunch of the other companies all go, don't buy Jeff's product. It sucks because of this. Don't buy Mick's product. It sucks because of this. Nobody says, like, buy my cheeseburger because it's delicious. And we have a nice atmosphere and nice waitresses or whatever. And that seems to be like the best course of action on that. I like that. It's a mindset thing, kind of the beginning of your four principles that you've got listed on the website. Say those again, please.
Mindset, tactics, skill, and equipment.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Those are
And
like your
I'd say,
four.
don't get me wrong. Like, I have big hopes and dreams, and I have a big vision. Tenicor and Tenicor related companies. I mean, my vision is that we will sell more holsters than anyone else in the world.
It
And
means you
which,
got to
which
crush. You got to
which
crush
in
your
one sense I
enemies.
could look at it that way, that I got
Yeah.
to crush other people, but that's not how I look at it. Like, we're one of the things we've been working on for a while is a retention holster, an active retention holster, right? Because I think that's a very stale space that is ready for something that is better. And I've had an idea for 12 plus years about like what a mechanism should be and could be, and how it would work better integrated with human performance and with
Do
carrying
it.
everything, right? And my plan is to do it. And those, like, combined with who we are and the Tenicor brand, like, all of those things, I think, are things that set us up to be able to accomplish that, to be able to sell more holsters than anybody else. Um, yeah. And does that mean we take market share away from other people? Probably. But that's okay. But I don't do that by trying to steal market share. I do that by living out what I believe in and by genuinely making a better product that people want and and communicating to the world through our brand of like who we are and what we believe. And if that resonates with people, they'll buy our product. Ultimately, if it doesn't, they won't. And again, it's the market that decides that.
I like that. I agree with that. I want an inside the waistband with retention.
I agree.
There's a couple companies that make something, but they suck.
Yep. When we make one, it will not suck.
Well, chop chop on that.
Yep.
People need it. Parting words. I always ask this question at the end of the discussion. If the people that listened, that watched you, if they never cross paths with you, if they never see you in the Idaho forest or
Can I interrupt
on,
you real quick?
yeah, yeah.
So, I was looking through your past episodes, and the coolest thing that I saw was Lanny Basham.
Lanny's cool.
Man, I don't
I've
listen to
been
that.
able to develop a little bit of a relationship with him, and
Yeah.
that is that's I mean, you've read the book many
Yep.
times, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And it's yeah, he's a pretty unique individual. He doesn't like dick jokes. I'll tell you that much.
I bet he doesn't. But yeah, that was a super cool interview. And yes, I was introduced to that book a long time ago, and I would say it's been a process of reading and rereading and trying to really understand what in the world he's talking about and apply it in my life. And
For you guys listening, watching, Lanny Basham was in one of the winningest rifle shooting Olympians in history. The book he's talking about is called With Winning in Mind. Basically, any competition shooter worth their salt, it became like their Bible of sorts for the mental game. That and maybe Enos's book of shooting. But Blaney also business people, golfers, all kinds of people, the headspace side of things. He's built a really good consulting business over the years. They work with all kinds of people. So
yeah, just the mental side of human performance and accomplishing things and being productive.
it's
And
like me to win. It's
yeah,
like me to make the best holsters in the world.
yep.
It's like me to be grateful or whatever thing you want. I
There are
do
lots
it.
of like statements in my life.
I do it every day. It's like me not to be a dickhead.
Yep, it's like me to eat whole single ingredient foods. It's like
There
me
we
to
go.
eat my food. It's like me to work out. It's like me to like do all of those things, right? And that's yeah. I mean, to the person that is not tracking really what it is, it sounds kind of cheesy and weird, but it's not at all. Uh it is a unlock to performance.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
outstanding.
so your mindset shift that you talked about that you had when your wife gave you loving correction or guidance, which is really cool that she loves you in a way that she would speak to you like that. It's nothing changed. You didn't change your a knowledge of machinery or holsters. You just changed what you were looking at and how you were looking at it. Instead of this damn bolt won't come apart, it was let me go get a torch and some WD-40 and get the bolt apart, or let me figure out a different way. And that's, I think, that was the whole thing that stopped him from winning was he was looking at the scoreboard and his heart rate instead of how's my cheek weld? How's my trigger prep? How's my breath work? And
Yeah.
process versus outcome.
Yep.
I dig it. So you
Yeah,
felt like you
sorry.
had to get that off your chest. No, you're good. You've
Yeah.
been what if you never meet these people, which oftentimes, we listen to podcasts, we don't get to hang out with folks. What would you leave them with? What would Jeff leave them
Oh,
with?
to your audience, the people out there?
Yeah, yeah.
Um what would I leave them with? I mean, the gratitude thing is pretty fundamental and life changing. Of like, you need to go do hard things that are interesting and uncomfortable. Nobody cares. Like, we think people care what we do, but nobody really cares what we do. And so go
What do you,
do the
what do you, what
thing.
do you mean by that?
I guess there's a group of people who probably need to hug and need to know that someone cares about them. But most people live their life for other people and expectations.
Hmm.
And most of it is self-invented expectations, right? And so nobody actually cares whether you're a police officer or a school teacher or a computer programmer or whatever. Like if you're doing the thing that you enjoy doing and you're being productive, everyone's going to be like, "Oh, that's really cool." And so no one cares if you go to this school or that school. No one really cares if you get an A or a B. Nobody cares. Like all of that is stuff that people talk about, you think they care about, but isn't that important. And so
Hmm.
you should go do the thing that interests you, the thing that you enjoy, and be productive at that. And then when you are faced with a difficult challenge that is inevitable, have gratitude for that challenge and persevere and work through that.
Talk about how when life's kicking you in the nuts, you can say, "I'm so grateful for this," because that's hard, and it's even easy to say. It's easy to say it, right? I can say, "I'm grateful for this poop sandwich" or whatever it is, but to actually be grateful is different. Talk about
Yeah.
that process.
So, okay. So here's a twist on all of that. I wouldn't say that you should be grateful. I would say you should give thanks.
Ah,
You can, and just like you can't love, you shouldn't be in love. You need to love somebody. Like the verb part of those things is the thing that gets missed. That we live in a
hmm,
world that wants the noun part and wants the state of being to just exist magically. Those things, it's just like shooting or jujitsu or business or whatever. Those things don't just come out of nowhere. They come out of action, right?
mm-hmm.
And so if you want to have gratitude, you have to give thanks. And so what does that look like? It says, thank you. Like, I'm grateful for this thing, right? You actually give thanks. Or if you want to love somebody, you can't muster up love, the feeling of love, but you kind of can create it if you go love somebody, right? So if you are struggling with your spouse, right, you can go perform acts of love for your spouse and give thanks for your spouse. And that will change your state of being where you will feel love and you will feel gratitude for your spouse. Right. And that's going to be the same. And again, that just ties back into Lanny Basham, right? Um, like it is like me to give thanks. It's like me to be grateful. Right. And so I give thanks. And then what happens? You become a more grateful, thankful person, and that changes like your disposition and who you are. So it is like the action of doing those things, which again, tying back to Lanny, like you saying the statement, it's like me, that is an action. Everything requires action. You can't just muster up a feeling or a state of being.
That's cool. I like that. I like that. You you shared a lot of stuff. I didn't know where the conversation would go. A lot of good stuff. It's very enjoyable discussion. I appreciate it. I see why you're doing so well in the holster business. It's a great products that you make, so that goes without saying. But there's a lot of I've got some holsters in the boxes. I've got um, probably 500 holsters in the armory next door to the recording room here. We all have that, right? All the stuff that we accumulate. And there's top quality stuff in there I will not put on a video or put on my body because the people that make it are not good people. So it's cool to have this discussion and hear what you and your family and team is doing. I appreciate that.
Yeah, right on. Thanks for having me on. This is awesome.
How
I'll
to
get you in ARCs too, and you've been on my list of guys to come hang out with and learn from. So,
You didn't
um,
even say hello to me in person when I saw you at SHOT Show.
you didn't say hello to me in person either. We just
By the
nodded
time I
at each
turned
other.
around, you were gone. You disappeared. You probably went for another mimosa.
No, I needed to get. Yeah, circle bar,
I'm
shot
just
show,
kidding, man. I'm
sleep,
just kidding.
sleep.
Um, how do people find you?
So Tenicor, Tenicor.com. Our YouTube channel is, we try to be pretty active there, and then Instagram. Me personally, I guess I post stuff on LinkedIn and Instagram a bit. Yeah.
Which I might add, you guys have a nice YouTube channel. You've made high quality edited nice videos, and it's good information. I just was watching a couple that you guys had done in the last few months. I follow the channel. You've got
Yep.
like you just were talking about words on the range was one I think I watched
Yep.
recently. It's good stuff. It's
Yep.
not, I would say it's more cerebral than, this is an XYZ gun. Let's go shoot a magazine and talk about some that, silly, inane thing. So it's good information. Go check that out.
Thank you.
You guys that tuned in, go give Tenicor a look-see on Instagram and YouTube, and I'm sure you guys are on Facebook and all that jazz too, right?
Yep.
If you're looking for serious equipment, for serious things, for serious people, all that good stuff, figure on buying one. It's one of like my top recommended products, the one I've been showing during the episode, as he's told you is having some changes. So order fast to get the one that they've got like this before they don't make it anymore. But I want to see the new one too. I'm sure it's going to be amazing. As always, be well. Don't be dickheads. Tell somebody you love them, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye now. Visit our website, carrytrainer.com, for information about classes held throughout the U.S., Carry Trainer apparel, and upcoming projects. You can also email us at training@carrytrainer.com for information about setting up your own private course or speaking engagement. Training@carrytrainer.com or carrytrainer.com.